Okay, so we've had a really fun 3 weeks of movies. We did Forrest Gump and then Finding Nemo, and now today is Back to the Future. Back to the Future took place in 1985. It was released in 1985. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis, who also directed Forrest Gump, which we covered. So, and then it was also produced. One of the producers, anyway, was Steven Spielberg. I think you all know him. Yes. So it stars, and here's our cast of characters on the next slide. So we have Marty McFly, and that is Michael J. Fox, and his crazy, eccentric scientist friend, Doc Brown, Christopher Lloyd there. And then that's his mother and father, Lorraine and George, when they're teenagers, obviously, in the 50s. And then we've got the bully, Biff. So we'll go through all of them. But so, yes, we got Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox, and he is afraid of going down the same nerdy, unsuccessful footsteps as his father. And then his friend, Christopher Lloyd, is this eccentric scientist, and it's a funny little team. It's sort of like that last week Dory and Marlon, odd couple type of team that we have here. And Doc invites Marty to a mall at night at 1 o'clock in the morning, I believe, because he says, I have a new invention I want you to see, and I want you to help me videotape it. Fun fact, everyone, if we can just, as an aside, the mall that they filmed that at was North Hollywood, and I ice skated there, and I did some modeling gigs there, too, as a child. So just want to say I know that parking lot very well. So, but I digress. Okay, so he gets there, and it's a modified DeLorean, because how futuristic is that in 1985? Modified DeLorean car that runs off plutonium, which Doc has stolen from the Libyans, and it can time travel. Well, he's showing the car to Marty, and the Libyans show up, and they shoot and kill Doc, and Marty is trying to escape. So he escapes by jumping in the car and takes off, but once the car gets to 88 miles per hour, it disappears and goes back in time. So he, in escaping, hits that 88 miles per hour and suddenly finds himself in the middle of his town, but his town is now, when his parents were in high school, 1955. So he encounters younger versions of his parents, and he has to make sure that they fall in love so that him and his siblings exist. Because as the movie goes on, we see them in this picture he happened to have in his pocket when he time traveled, and they start to disappear. So he has to make sure his parents get back together here so that his whole family are still alive. But even more dauntingly, somehow he's got to get back to his own time. And of course, in 1955, I don't even know in 2003, how easy it is to get plutonium. Because he needs plutonium to charge the car to get back to 1985. And then Doc realizes you can use the power of lightning. And they know from the future when lightning's going to strike. And that's going to help him get home. But also it will help him, he hopes, to get home to save Doc. Because Doc, of course, we saw got killed. So he's hoping if he can go back even a couple minutes sooner, he can save Doc Brown too. So Marty meets up his dad, George, in a coffee shop. It's pretty funny because he's got one of those 80s vests on, and everyone thinks, hey, sailor, what you doing? And it's, he totally looks like a fish out of water. And Marty sees that George is very shy and nerdy. He gets bullied by Biff from the get-go. And he's really trying to encourage George to ask Lorraine, his mom, his future mom, to the high school dance that's coming up, and to share his feelings of how he feels with Lorraine. And then he also later on encourages his dad. He sees that his dad is very creative and is doing these comic books. He's drawing comic books, and he's really trying to encourage his dad. But of course, his dad at that point is, no, I can't do it. What if I fail? So he's trying to be an encouraging person to his father, his high school father. He also discovers his mother, who is very uptight, if you will, in the 80s, is now very kind of wild. And she actually has a crush on Marty, her son. Of course, she doesn't realize it's her son, but she has. So he's trying to, get his mother's attention away from him and onto his future father. Now, finally, he comes up with a plan so that his father George is there to fight off Biff the bully, or actually, well, first it's him, so that he looks like the hero, so his parents will fall in love. So, I mean, it's a whole thing where his dad finally sticks up to the bully. His mom and his father go to the dance, and they have their first kiss, and they fall in love. Now, Marty ends up in the band. That's a whole nother side story, which was his own dream, was to be in a band and play music. And so this is sort of like Forrest Gump, in which suddenly we have a character that has somehow influenced history for all of us, because he knows the song Johnny Be Good as a classic from the 80s, right? And they don't know it in 1955, but they play it, and Marvin Berry, Chuck Berry's cousin, happens to be in the band, and he calls Chuck Berry and says, "Hey, I've got this new song for us." So really the song everyone came from Marty McFly. So back home in 1985, they've timed the lightning just right to power the DeLorean. He discovers that Doc Brown was not killed after all, because he did get one of Marty's warnings. Marty kept trying to warn him, and he kept saying, "I don't want to know the future," but he finally did look, and he gets saved. And also his parents now, in the new 1985, are successful and healthy and in love, and it's Biff, the bully, that actually works for them and is intimidated by them. And it's all because of these small influences of how they think, the actions they take, and what they start to think is possible back when they were now in high school moving forward. Now, of course, Doc Brown is off at the end of the movie. He's off on another adventure, the future. This is also known as Part 2, where they go to 2015. 2015, everyone, is now 8 years behind us. It was interesting when we showed this to our two sons for the 30th anniversary in 2015. And so most of us have experienced the 80s, so we know the 80s and going back to the 50s. But for them, they had to go back in time to the 80s and then back in time to the 50s, right? So that was an interesting experience trying to explain, but they didn't have that technology in the 80s, which is why now, and so that was a whole, anyone under the age of, I'm afraid to even say it, 35 or 40? Who saw it? Did you understand this? Okay, good. See, they're very smart. You all got it. Good. But it was like going back in time, really, for you, right? Okay, so for the rest of us, it was we were in time, and then we went back in time. So, time is funny. But here is what, as I was watching this film, I thought, this is a great metaphysical teacher. And there are 3 very clear spiritual truths that we can pick up from this. So here it is. Here's my 3 takeaways for you all. 3 spiritual truths from Back to the Future. 1, your thoughts, beliefs, and actions of today create your future. So how you think about yourself right now affects your future. Your beliefs right now and what you may be afraid of affects your future. Making mistakes and allowing yourself to experiment and take action can either lead to your greatest triumph and legacy or not, depending on if you take action. Number 2, we can go back in time. We can't go back in time, but we can start now to create our future. They almost sound like they're alike, but they're slightly different. In other words, our today is yesterday's choices, thoughts, and beliefs. So what you're experiencing today is based on the past. And then number 3, love. Once again, we've seen this in all 3 movies. Love is the driving force of life. We all want to be loved, feel love. And it's because we want to remember who we truly are, our divine nature, which is love. And ultimately, Marty discovers that without love, we don't exist. So let's get into our DeLoreans and jump into spiritual truth number 1. Your thoughts, beliefs, and actions of today create your future. So we have Biff the bully. And when we first see him, again, he's bullying George, Marty's dad. And then when we first see him in 1955, he's bullying George. he's the same. The jokes are the same, the attitude's the same, the cheating on papers is the same. He hasn't changed. So he has chosen the one thing in life that he is going to be his thinking, functioning self, and he's taken that into his today, now really into his future. And George McFly, first version, doesn't believe in himself, and he almost feels like he deserves the bullying. And it's not until Marty tries to help his dad and really say, hey, you have a talent in comic book writing, or encourages him to share his feelings and go after his mom, even though he may fail. It's these little encouragements that actually end up having an impact on his dad, which then new George becomes confident and happily married and successful from his passion with writing comic books. So the new past created a new future. When I was 16 years old, I had this dream. It seems funny probably to most people, but at the age of 16, I had this dream to be a Unity minister. Wow, here I am, everybody. I also loved, as a teenager, weddings and being a part of weddings, and I was a wedding coordinator for a while. I also grew up in a household that was very focused on health and nutrition, and I wanted to maybe do that, so I became a registered dietitian. That was my first career. I also knew I wanted more than one career in my life. Back then in the 80s, we all said you do one career, right, for like 20 years, 30 years, but I just knew I wanted to try out life and do lots of different careers. All of those seeds were planted from high school or childhood and have started to come and be expressed or manifested as an adult. See, it was my teenage self that created my current self and those goals. So you're living your yesterday now. So it's the thoughts of the past that have gotten you here. It's the beliefs of the past that have gotten you here. So to create or influence our future, we start now. So right now you're creating your now, this now moment. But more importantly, you're starting to create your tomorrow and your tomorrow of tomorrows. So how are you thinking about yourself today? What are you going to do about your goals today? How do you want to think about yourself or believe about yourself today? Because you're right now back to the future. See, the vibrations and frequencies you send out now are moving forward to create your life. So in one version of George McFly, when he thinks of himself as not worthy or successful and he's afraid to take actions towards his dreams, he creates a miserable life for himself and everybody else in his family. But in the other version, when he changes his thoughts around failure, he stretches himself beyond his comfort level, he becomes successful and happy. And the successful George McFly tells his kids, it's pretty ironic, he says, I've always said, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. See, he could have stayed in one state of mind, thought, belief, but with that little bit of encouragement from Marty, it changed him into a new future, that you can do anything and accomplish anything. Even Doc changes his mind. Doc reminds me a little bit about Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, who said, I reserve the right to change my mind. So Doc, he's creative and excited. He doesn't mind failure. He experiments. He has amazing inventions. But he does change his thought or his belief about one thing, and that is knowing the future. So the whole movie, Marty's trying to tell him, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you something, because he wants to save Doc from getting killed and shot, and he refuses, and then he even gets a letter. Marty writes a letter, which Doc tears up. But we find out when Marty does go a couple minutes earlier back to 1985 that Doc did read the letter. So he changed his mind about it and thought, let me know the future. And it was in changing his belief around that idea that it saved his life. Changing an old thought, no, I can never know that, saved his life. And so within that even, what fear holds us back? The entire movie, George is afraid of rejection. But remember, if you never try, then you're never going to get your dreams and goals. But if you try, you may have a chance of getting your dreams and goals. It's like what Dory said last week, right? If you never let anything happen, nothing will ever happen. So Doc doesn't let fear hold him back, and he thinks of other solutions, and he's open to a new thought. You know, Thomas Edison, it took him, do you all know this, 10,000 experiments to create the light bulb? And here's a great quote. He said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." And then he went on to say, many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Yeah, George McFly had his comic book and the girl right in front of them. They were so close, but the old version of him was too afraid to try. And the new second version, he was so close, but with encouragement, with some positive, you can do this, I'm going to support and help you with this. His friend Marty helped him to realize success. And even at the end, Marty, he's ready to leave, 1955. He's in the DeLorean, but the car won't start. And he's trying again, he's trying again. He's so close to his dream of getting back home. He keeps trying. And in his frustration, he hits his head, on the steering wheel, and it starts. And I think, yep, sometimes it takes attempt after attempt after attempt and a lot of frustration until our dreams are realized. Situations occur. The car won't start. But it's our thoughts, our emotions, our actions. What are we going to do about it? Our thoughts, words, actions, feelings, that's what decides how we experience them. And with fear, feeling unworthy or failure, we can feel that way. We can get stuck there, or we can say, I can do this. I won't give up. But either one of us carries us to the future. The part of us that's going to worry and be concerned and fear success, really, or the one that says, I'm not going to give up, I can do this. Both will carry us to the future. So our first take-home lesson from Back to the Future is our thoughts, beliefs, and actions of today create our future. And number 2, our today is from yesterday's choices, thoughts, and beliefs, or yesteryears. So again, we can't go back in time, but we can start now to create our future. We can't go back. Sometimes we really want to go back. Sometimes we want to go back like 5 minutes ago. Ooh, I wish I didn't say that. Sometimes we want to go years back and say, if only I'd taken a different path. But we can't. We just have to do that whole spiritual practice of acceptance. So we'll just take a breath. Because the vibrations that were sent out then have created you now. So today you're living life from yesterday's manifestations or creative energy. But we're creating all the time. Here's a great quote here from Charles Kettering. You can't have a better tomorrow if you're thinking about yesterday all the time. In other words, if you're thinking about yesterday all the time, you're creating more yesterdays. Oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd done that. Guess what? Now here you are 20 years later. I wish I'd done that. Or, wow, I didn't do that. Let me then make a different choice and have a different thought that will carry me in a new direction. So 20 years later, I can say, that didn't work out, but I took that and I ran with it. And here I am now. right? This is where we use our creative energy. So in Unity, our Unity Trinity is mind, idea, expression. It's how everything is created. And so even if we go back to art night, we had a great art night in April. And was all the art the same? No. There were so many different types of art. There was singing, there was quilting, there was jewelry, there was painting, but even within the same medium, it was different. All the paintings were not the same. Why? Because each of us brings our own experiences and point of view and creative energy to life. It's the same with life. It's not just art, but it's the art of life. So divine order is how we manifest, and it's always that creative process of mind, idea, expression. And we use it all the time, consciously or not. Because although the process is divine, the outcome may not be. So are we going to be conscious about it or not? And this is where family and friends and society really have an influence over our own thoughts and beliefs. There have been several studies specific to how living in certain neighborhoods affect us. So the bottom line is this. If you're in a neighborhood where there's more college graduates, you're more likely to become a college graduate. And we saw this with our own son, our older son. He went to a high school that was focused on the arts, which was fine, but I had a very driven, highly motivated child who started to become very passive about his future. So instead of four-year colleges and universities, he started saying he didn't want to go to university. And I have nothing, believe me, I have nothing against community colleges. In fact, I think they're great. As a parent, to get all those GEs out of the way for inexpensive, fantastic. Especially if you don't know what you want to do. Fantastic. But this was a child that was aiming for a top tier 4-year university. And then suddenly, because of the climate, the attitudes, the beliefs of that community, he was starting to disappear. His motivation was gone. And then we moved him to, actually I'll just do a plug here, the high school at Moorpark College, where it was a combination of high school and college. And he excelled. He was challenged and excited by both the high school courses and the college courses. And it was because the students and the teachers there all supported his talents, his goals, his wanting to get ahead, loving to learn at a higher level. It was all about the community and the people he surrounded himself. In the movie, Marty comes to school late, and the principal, who's been there since his father has been there, says, "No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of this city." What a seed to plant, right? What are the seeds that we're planting? So Marty tries out for the school talent. I think it's a talent show, right? And he gets rejected, and he's with his girlfriend, and he's going on and on. I'm not good enough, and then suddenly he goes, "Oh no, I'm sounding like my dad." Our kids hear us. The people around us hear us. But do you know that daughters who hear their mothers speak poorly about their own bodies have shame and negativity around their bodies by the age of between 5 and 8? That girls who hear mothers speak negatively about their bodies are more likely to have eating disorders and diet before they even get to high school? So if we've heard growing up that money doesn't grow on trees, we may struggle with prosperity consciousness or abundance creation ideas. If we heard kids are meant to be heard but not seen, or seen but not heard, thank you. See, I didn't hear that. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Didn't hear it. Kids are meant to be seen but not heard. We may struggle with getting our own needs met or speaking our truth or letting our voice or opinion be heard by other people's. The messages we receive from family and our community and people around us, it matters. And this is what I was saying last week with Nemo too. Choose people who are willing to grow, who are going to cheer you on, who will give you support, who are going to see the best in you, and who want the best for you. It doesn't mean you got to be perfect, but they're going to be there to say, you don't have to be perfect, but we're here to support you and keep you going in a positive way. In other words, don't inherit the limited thoughts and beliefs of your family or your culture or 1955 or 1985 or 2023. Someone once said, spending today complaining about yesterday won't make tomorrow any better. So spend time with those who are grateful for yesterday and are dreaming and imagining and creating for tomorrow, because that's the energy we want to surround ourselves with. So today was built from yesterday, and you're creating tomorrow in this moment. And that gets us to our third point. The third takeaway is, without love, we don't exist. So here's a quote from our co-founder, Charles Fillmore. It's from his book, Keep a True Lent. Love in divine mind, principle, God, is the idea of universal unity. In expression, it is the power that joins and binds together the universe and everything in it. When it is made consciously active, it reconstructs, rebuilds, and restores everyone and his or her world. It restores their world. This is the entire plot of the movie, everybody. Because if Marty doesn't actively get his parents to meet at that high school dance and fall in love, then he and his siblings no longer exist. Their world and family as they know it no longer exist. But see, this is why we want to come together in community and friendship and partnerships, because we know at a deep soul level that that's what we want to do. We want to remind ourselves and each other of the love that we are. We want to bind together in unity. We want to be one with everyone and everything. And so when we actively apply love to our interactions, then we're reminding ourselves and those we interact with of our truth. And that's how we rebuild and transform and restore our world. So when I say actively apply love, what do I mean? I mean, when you wake up in the morning, going into your heart space, what would be a loving act I can do? Maybe it's texting a friend. Maybe it's making coffee for your partner. Maybe it's making lunch for your child. I stopped making lunches when they were in 5th grade. So there were some times I made it in like 8th grade. They were like, oh, thank you, Mom. And I was like, you're welcome. My loving act for you, child. I joke. But what is a loving, kind act you can do before you even leave the house? And then before you leave the house, going into your heart space. How can I be love in action today? Letting the people on the road go before you. Opening a door for someone who's struggling. Because kindness is love in expression. Be kind. Respect is love in expression. Be respectful. Honesty, authenticity is love and expression. Be honest and authentic. So it is our power of love that allows us to comprehend oneness. So that's why when one of us forgets that we're love, we disappear. Right? When we forget we're love, we disappear. We see folks who disappear through addiction or depression or suicide. They've forgotten that they're love. And so we can be love, and we can begin to see how we're all connected. Me being and expressing kindness and love and respect to you allows you to connect with me, and we can now be connected together, even if it's for a small moment. Because that's the other part of love. It harmonizes. It attracts us to that which we want to be and feel. So if we want to be loved and feel love, it's because we want to remember who we truly are, love. We are a manifestation, outworking of God, that one power, one presence, underlying all of the existence of you. you love want to unify with you and other love. Ultimately, Marty saves the day because of love, because he loves his parents. He wants to see them happy. He loves his family. He doesn't want to see them disappear. He wants them all together. He loves Doc. He doesn't want to see him lose his life. So it's love that brings us and connects us and reminds us of our oneness. So from this fun, insightful movie, we're reminded of 3 spiritual truths. Your thoughts, beliefs, and actions of today create your future. Our today is from yesterday or yesteryear's choices, thoughts, and beliefs. But without love, we don't exist. When Marty ends up on Doc's doorstep in 1955, Doc says, "You must stay here. You can't go out into the world or interact with anybody, because then you're going to change or alter the future." So we can stay here and not do anything. Or we can change our future. We can get out and change the world with love and creativity, with lots of effort sometimes, and we can change the future for the best. Here's what Thomas Edison said. If we all did the things we really are really capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves. So here's your invitation to go out and astound yourselves this week. Blessings, everyone.